Soho area of London has a long-standing reputation as one of the top entertainment districts in the capital. By day it is frequently visited for its range of international restaurants and cafes. By night the place comes alive as it is home to world-famous theatres and acts as London's main gay village. Other points of interest include its historical jazz clubs and, of course, its sex industry. But located at the heart of all this is one of the best loved rock and metal bars in the country, the Crobar. A popular spot for rock and metal fans, the Crobar also attracts music journalists and producers, and has been visited in recent years by members of Orange Goblin, Down, Slayer and the Foo Fighters. The Jukebox boasts a range of music across a variety of subgenres from classic rock, hardcore punk, grunge and death metal. The Crobar is of course open to anyone and has been warmly received by non-metalheads.
So yeah, it's the first time I've been here and it's not really my place. I'm studying around the corner and it's just, I would never go to a place like this. I would really recommend it to people, no matter what they're interested in. It's just a matter of who you're with, I guess. The guys in here are super cool. I mean, I think that's really cool.
Really happy about it. It's we just stumbled across it as we were walking along, and we're actually out for we've been out all day. We've been out all day drinking in London, and we thought we want a bit of music, we want to go somewhere, and a few of us love a bit of heavy metal music, and yeah, it's working for us. We came here for one drink, we're on our fourth, so yeah.
Happy hour runs from 4 PM to 9 PM and the bar remains open until 3 AM. It boasts an impressive selection of whiskies, bourbons, shooters and imported beers, all at reasonable prices.
But they have a lot of whiskey, they have a lot of gin, they have a lot of beers. It's a good selection.
Happy days. Goes with the whiskey, goes with the bourbon.
Yeah, we were having wine, it was great.
£7 a bottle, no?
That's a good deal.
We are naked
Due to its popularity and small space inside, it does inevitably become crowded, but the jukebox, cheap drinks and excitable buzz of the crowd make it an ideal destination for a group of friends hoping to get truly, brutally smashed.
So here we are. Richard, how you doing?
I'm good, Rex. How are you, mate?
Yeah,
Long
nice,
time
mate,
no
nice,
see,
mate.
dude. Bloody piss poor circumstances, but yeah, no, it's nice to catch up.
Yeah, no, totally. It's been too long. Been stuck out in
Oh.
the wilds of Berkshire for a long time, and haven't managed to get to Soho for years.
No, it's been a while since I saw you in town, but yeah, no, these things happen, don't they? It's getting in and out of London, especially at late night, is still not easy.
No,
You know,
got harder.
for one of the biggest leading capitals in the world, I still think that nighttime transport is poor.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, 24-hour tubes at the weekend, brilliant. We should have had that 30 years ago. We should have 24-hour tubes every day of the week now. All right, maybe not Monday, Tuesday, and I don't have to do maintenance, but certainly Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, if things go well, I can grab a train direct up into London and have a few drinks. Because I definitely.
Well, Crossrail.
Yeah, they're talking about
Yeah.
main lines from Reading up to London. So.
Well, yes, if they ever get it finished, that was the idea, wouldn't it? But you know, that was supposed to be done in time for the Olympics.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. So I suppose before we end up talking too much crap, we should crack on.
Yeah.
Few questions for you for the zine and all that, and thank you for doing this, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for asking.
No, pleasure. So I thought we'd kick off with a few little bits and pieces about, well, you really, you know, what led you to you know, life before the before Soho, all that kind of thing, the whole rock and metal thing. How did you get into all of that?
My story's much like everybody else, blowing in the wind, mate. You know. I mean, I grew up in, well, my grandparents were London Welsh, so I spent a lot of time in London as a kid, back and forth. But I primarily did my schooling in Wales, place called Aberystwyth, and I think I was about 14 when somebody played me Led Zeppelin, and that was me. I was hooked. So I've been into, you know, metal, and it was easy to get into metal at that point because, you know, you still had Thin Lizzy on top of the pops, and you know, it was, all of that stuff was happening. Deep Purple was still going. It was, you know, it was very much alive at that point. And you know, I've been listening to rock and roll. My old man liked rock and roll, and he liked classical and big band and all of that sort of stuff. So I grew up on that. And, you know, I loved Buddy Holly when I was 8. I liked the Beatles for about 6 months, but it was never, never quite hard enough.
Yeah.
Never had enough of an edge for me. And then, as I say, I discovered Zeppelin when I was 14, and then Lizzy soon after, and Purple. And it was like, hallelujah, thank you, here we go. This is what I was looking.
This is what I've been missing.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so, you know, been a headbanger ever since. I mean, I used to travel mostly to the NEC in Birmingham in those days to see gigs, because that was the nearest big venue from mid Wales. The odd one in Cardiff, the odd one in Manchester, and quite often London. You know, we used to organise coach trips, coaches or minibuses or whatever, just to come down to, say, the Hammersmith Odeon, just to go and see a gig, and then, you know, back on the bus and an 8-hour drive back to Wales again. But, you know, it was worth it. I wanted to be at those gigs, so you had to make the effort.
There were amazing gigs in those venues. They really were.
Oh, I mean, I'll never forget Guns N' Roses in the Hammersmith Odeon. Ooh, when would that have been? Late 80s, 2 hours non-stop of just the most unbelievable noise you'd ever heard. And the atmosphere was just, you know, and it's that atmosphere, and this is what I do miss. This is why I've always liked work in pubs, is that atmosphere when you get a crowd full of people, room full of people all buzzing. And especially when it comes to music, you know, everybody's there for the same reason. So any differences you may have outside of music are left at the door. And, you know, being in a mosh pit is one of the most wonderful things. It's, you're getting hugged by 2,000 people. You know, it's a way of really being part of humanity in a way that leaves me feeling very, very satisfied. I suppose it must be the same for people who are into rugby or football or whatever, you know, but I've never been much for sports. I mean, music has been my thing. And then when I was, you know, early 20s, it was time to get out of Wales. It was, I mean, I had a bar there in Aberystwyth for a couple of years, but I remember standing there thinking, oh God, you know, if I stay here, then this is all I'm ever going to have forever and ever. And so I thought, nah, I need to get out of here.
Yeah, that's
spent a bit of time in Manchester, liked it, but I went up there because my girlfriend was in university, and then we split up, so I didn't have much reason to stay there. So wandered with my way down to London, because as I said, I was familiar with London from being a kid. And then I got very, very lucky. I'd done a couple of, worked in the Kensington Roof Gardens and a couple of pubs here and there, but I wasn't happy. So I went wandering around the West End one night, and somebody said to me, you know, there's a club around the corner called the Borderline. Try there. So I went round, and there was the manager standing outside in full country and western gear, while these pretty ladies were walking out carrying huge inflatable cacti. And I'm like, all right, what's going on here? So anyway, so mate, you got you know, any bar work? I'm looking for work. And he said, I'm busy at the moment, come back tomorrow at 7. So I rocked back up, it was Thursday night. Rocked up 7 o'clock, and he said, can you work tonight? The guy, somebody's off sick. We've got a new guy supposed to start on Monday. We phoned him, but he refused to work. He says he's got a party to go to. So I said, yeah, go on and give me a t-shirt. So behind this bar I went, and whoa, blew my brains out, because I got 2 bands. Don't remember who the hell they were, but it was like, all right, you know, this is fun, lovely, enjoyed that. Got like 11:30, and I thought, all right, that's it. And they said, no, we've got this club night now. We have club nights every night until 3. I'm like, okay. And it was Rocket. And I was as happy as a pig in shit, because I suddenly, so there I am behind the bar, and it's just the most amazing rock club full of, you know, the real thing. There's Hells Angels, there's glam rockers, there's skateboard kids. You remember Rocket? It was just,
yeah, very well,
mishmash of everybody who was into rock. And so I was like, yeah, I'm staying here. This is lovely. And a couple of years later, or within largely less than that, in about 14 months, I was the general manager. So, and I was there for 7 years. And yeah, just awesome. One of the best jobs I ever had. You know, I was just down in the basement, just a bunch of us getting on with being rock and rollers, and head office never bothered us. And we just had such a lovely time, as you well know.
Yes, as I well remember. Very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, well, 2000, we got sold to this, what they're called, SFI, hideous large company. They owned All Bar One, they owned Club Med. They are just awful. And they came in, and immediately it was like, we just won Time Out Venue of the Year award, right, which I worked bloody hard to achieve. And this lot come along, and they're like, right, no back shelf, we want optics in, no free pouring, this, that. I'm like, no, guys, we're a rock and roll venue. You know, there's reasons we do this. We're not a pub. Oh, well, we run pubs, so you have to operate the same way as our pubs do. So I thought, well, I'm not staying here to now bury what I've created, what I've worked so hard to do in the last 7 years. I'm not staying to watch that go down the drain. And so I quit. I think it was final straw was New Year's Eve. I got informed that they wanted us to do a full profit and loss account for the evening. And they needed it at head office at 9 o'clock on the following morning. And then underneath that, it said there'll be nobody in head office until the 9th of January. Have a lovely new year. Oh, I thought, it's the busiest night of the year. It's the most manic night of the year. You want me to add an extra 5 hours work to that day? So I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so I wrote them my letter of resignation, and then all the staff went out, well, if you're not staying, we're not staying either. So we all just resigned en masse. So needed to find a job, got a job with Mean Fiddler at the garage.
Oh yeah, I remember the garage.
And oh mate, it was horrible. I mean, Mean Fiddler weren't the greatest company to work for, but at the time the garage had a big hole in the ceiling right at the front of the stage. So if it rained, any punters at the front of the stage just got soaked. There was a false ceiling in the office that mostly was gone and was full of pigeons. So I had to cover the computers, the chair, everything in bin liners at the end of every shift, because you'd come in, everything was covered in pigeon shit. So, yeah, no, it wasn't exactly the borderline. So Dennis, who owned the Acoustic Cafe, which became the Crobar, he phoned me up and he said, Rich, I've had enough. You know, I've been here 6 years, don't want to do this anymore. Do you know anybody who wants to buy the lease? So I said, give me 48 hours, Dennis. Do not tell anybody else. And phoned around, a couple of mates, we scraped the money together, and we got the lease off him. And we opened on the 1st of July 2001 without a penny to our name. We had a week to raise £1,000 rent and enough money to buy beer for the second week. And yeah, no, it was going to be hit and miss. Anyway, we managed it the first week, we managed it the second week, and we managed it every week after that. Yeah. And yeah, no, thankfully, because I kind of knew it would happen, there was no proper rock bar, especially a late night one. You know, the Intrepid Fox at the time was still the pub, and they still shut at 11 o'clock. So there was no late night rock bar. There were clubs, but there was no way you could go and sit down, have a drink and actually chat to your friends, you know. Rock clubs were really lovely, but it was a case of standing there going, yeah, and not understanding a word anybody else said to you, because that's why we used to sit in my office and chat, because you couldn't chat at the bar. Exactly. It was just too loud.
Many hours sat in your office chatting.
Yeah, oh yeah. That was a good office, that was.
Oh yeah. Very
but I thought, you know, metalers don't always want to go to clubs. A lot of them have just finished work. They actually want to go and have a few beers, sit down, have a chat. So I knew that, you know, the idea was sound, and because it only took a few months for the metal community to realise we were there, and being part of the metal community helped, because obviously I just let everybody I knew know that I would now run a rock bar.
Yeah.
And yeah, within 6 months, you know, we were busy, and we've been busy ever since. So
I think suffice to say, the place has become a little bit of a legend over the years.
Yeah, well, it has done. I mean, that was never the intention. You know, we never set out to become a legend. We, you know, just opened a bar. What it became is, you know, well, it's like any bar, you know, you own it for the first maybe 6 months or so, but then after that, it ceases to be your bar and becomes a beast in its own right.
Yeah.
Because a bar is not just the person who owns it. You set the tone, but then it's your customers that make the bar.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the metal crowd, as you know, one of the friendliest bunch of people you could ever meet. You know, they're not into ag and trouble. They just want to get drunk and have a good time and shake their heads a bit. So, yeah, you know, it grew into something well beyond anything I ever imagined when we opened the doors. Oh God, yeah. But you know, it's been an absolutely lovely journey. I enjoyed every second of it. I'm sure I have. I only remember about half of it, but I'm sure I enjoyed the other half just as much. And you know, it's been a battle. I mean, in the early days, the cops hated us. The council really hated us. Because it was a generational thing. You know, there's all these old boys looking at a bunch of young people with long hair and tattoos having fun, and they didn't like it. So they did their best to shut us down. We fought that off. We dealt with Crossrail. We've had Manor Street's been dug up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 times in the years we've been there. I mean, major digs, you know, 3 months or more. Luckily for us, the metal crowd aren't precious. If we'd been a high-end cocktail bar, then that would have buggered us. But the metal crowd are like, you know, it's a metal bar. I don't care. Once I'm inside, who gives a shit what's going on outside?
Yeah, and all those sort of things become a bit of an adventure in a weird way for the metal crowd.
Well, yeah, yes, they do. They do. I mean, you know, Soho's been like that for the last few years. You know, you head down a street, you think, right, if I go down here, turn left, that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
Halfway down, it's like, oh, Harris fencing and hoarding. They're knocking the building down. Can't go down this street now. So it's been like that in Soho for a while, you know, certainly the last 10, 12 years. I mean, ever since Crossrail 2006, that started all the sort of building site mayhem. And in the last few years, we've had to put up with them knocking down foils, the old foils, the other side of the road from us. So, you know, the last 2 years, Manor Street has literally been the pavement outside the Crobar. That's been its width, and then a bunch of wooden hoarding. And then when they're demolishing it, God alive, a couple of years ago now, they managed to fill the main drain down Manor Street with concrete. So they had to dig all of that out. So for 9 months, we had one of those big shit trucks parked outside, pumping our drains out internally with big hoses for every 30, 40 minutes. Well, some poor bloke quite literally dug out a cement-filled drain in the same way that they dug their way out of Stalag Luft 71 in The Great Escape. He literally had a little platform thing he lay on tracks, and he pulled himself in with a bit of string, and he dug all the soil out from around the pipe. And oh mate, you know. But as I say, because it was the metal crowd, the alternative crowd, people kind of saw it as you say, part of the adventure rather than an issue. So it's been a battle royal all the way through. And then of course COVID, I've defeated a lot of enemies. I've got past an awful lot of obstacles, but this one was beyond me. So and then yeah, insurance companies refused to pay out. Landlord insisted on full rent, and yeah, it just became impossible. Couldn't reopen in July because we could have had a maximum of 8 people in. Don't know where we'd have put the doorman, because the pavement being that narrow, where do you put a doorman that a customer can even come in and maintain 2 meter social distance? How do you cope with those narrow stairs in the toilets? 2 people couldn't go to the loo at the same time. So yeah, no, it was just not feasible to open, and it would have probably cost more money to open than we'd ever have made. So we didn't reopen, and bit by bit the landlords drained all the money.
Shame.
Is you know, when you're paying nearly £3 a week rent, then the money in the bank doesn't last very long.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's not good.
No, so yeah, so that's pretty much my story and how we find ourselves here.
Fair enough. Well, actually, that leads on relatively nicely, because I remember watching on YouTube very recently a little mini documentary called, I think it was When the Lights Go Out. I think it's called.
Yes.
Music When the Lights Go Out. And
Yeah.
that was a great piece. It really was.
They did an awesome job. I mean, Lucy and Andrew did a brilliant job on it. I mean, it started off, they emailed me and said, could we interview you? We want to do a documentary about Soho and COVID. So I said, yeah, no worries. So we did the interview. And the idea originally was that they were going to interview maybe 5 or 6 other cafe, restaurant, bar, pub managers, that kind of thing. And it was supposed to be about Soho in general, but the second lockdown came along. So they, almost impossible to get hold of anybody, do any interviews. So they decided to just crack ahead and do it based solely around the Crobar.
Right.
I mean, I still think it's a documentary about Soho rather than a documentary about just the Crobar. It was just that, my interviewers ended up being the only one they had. But it's brilliant. It really is brilliant. I mean, the first time I saw it, it reduced me to tears. That opening scene, what I call the ghost sequence, where they projected all the footage onto the walls. I mean, oh, wow. I just, that and the bit where they're talking to people on Old Compton Street. Because that's what I always loved about Soho. I mean, I used to walk down Old Compton Street to go and get a sandwich. And you do that about 11 o'clock at night, and you are walking through all these people partying off their tits, having an awesome time. And that's what I loved about Soho, that sense of just everybody's having fun. And, it's such a non-judgmental place, Soho. It doesn't belong to anybody. There are no gangs that lay claim to it. It belongs to all and everybody, and you can wear what the hell you like and just have the best time ever, and you don't get judged for it. It's one of the safest places in the world. I remember that guy in the Crobar one night, and he was from Cardiff. There's a place called Splot in Cardiff.
Okay.
And it is one of the dodgiest places in the country. Huge council estates, and it is dodgy as hell. So this guy's in, and he said to me, I said, we're closing, mate, you got to leave. And he's like, I can't get my train from Victoria until like 6 o'clock. Where can I go that's safe? And I said, well, you're pretty safe around here. I said, anyway, but I said, go around the corner, there's a cafe called Valentino's. That's open all night. You sit there and drink a couple of coffees. My hours and hours we all spent in Valentino's. And he said to me, he said, oh yeah, he said, but it's dangerous around here. I had lots of stabbings. I said, where are you from? He said, Splot in Cardiff. I said, mate, I said, you are far more in danger walking from your own house to the bus stop than you're ever going to be walking around Soho, even at 4 or 5 in the morning. I said, nobody out there wants to give you bother. As long as you don't give anybody hassle, nobody will give you hassle.
Yeah.
I said, it's as simple as that, I mean, all my years, 26 years on Manet Street, and only once did I ever feel threatened. And I was walking down Charing Cross Road past the Garrick Theatre, going to get the night bus home. And I saw these 3 skinheads, puffer jackets, bleached jeans, big dogs. And they crossed the road, and I thought, here we go. And they made a line on the pavement. I thought, here we go. And they stopped. I couldn't go past them. And I thought, right, I'm going to get a kick in here, aren't I? And one of them said, "You're very cute, lovely. Fancy coming back for a gangbang?" So I'm like, "Thank you, gentlemen. It's very kind, but I've got a wife and kid waiting for me at home. I've just finished work." And they went, "All right, dear. Well, maybe next time." And off they went. And I swear to God, it's the only time in 27 years that I thought I was going to get a kicking. So, it's just one of the safest places ever. And I miss that so much. I just miss that atmosphere, that vibe. Just, just as I say, going for a sandwich and bumping into so many people I know and just random strangers saying hello. And, it's
a gangbang.
Yeah, indeed, absolutely, yes.
One of the things I remember seeing in that when the lights go out thing was your comment about how Soho used to be that great place for struggling artists and creative types. And I had a thought, so seeing as this is orientated, it's going to be featured on our e-zine, which is CBDzine.com. What kind of influence do you think that whole cannabis and narcotics market had on the creativity that was going on back then?
Oh, well, a huge amount. We're all aware that obviously, a little bit of naughty helps creativity. Too much and it stifles it, but a little bit really, really helps. And I remember a guy I used to know who was a photographer who used to bimble around Soho. I mean, he used to do the odd proper gigs and things, but he just used to bimble around, take pictures. Can't remember his name now. He used to work in the ship. And he worked in the ship in Soho, so a bit of this, a bit of that. But I remember him telling me, he said, some nights you'd go out and have a couple of spliffs, some nights you'd have some MDMA, speed, or coke. And then he'd go out and take photos. And he found that obviously, depending on what he was on, would influence what he'd notice and what he'd take photos of on a given night. So, I think that's a fairly good example of somebody using, a variety of narcotics and using that state of mind to be creative. Because he said, obviously, there's a big difference between being on spliff and, say, being on coke, or being on E. He said, when he was on E, he found himself looking for nice things, cute things, people cuddling and kissing and that kind of thing, Where he said on coke, it's a completely different thing. You notice different things. So, and I think that's been the case for a long, long time. I mean, let's not kid ourselves that, our generation discovered narcotics or that the 60s discovered it. I remember reading in a book called The Drug User's Diaries, and it's just a selection of bits out of people's diaries. And there's one piece where a guy was describing being taken to a cannabis den in Leicester Square. Where he goes up these stairs, and he said you walk in and it's just like this Oriental palace. And they took your shoe, your jacket, and they gave you this nice silk sort of kimono to wear and some soft slippers, and then there was these like little low sofas and in sort of booths. And he said they bought you these lozenges of hash which you could eat, and then they bought you a pipe, and he said, it's just the most civilized and amazing thing that this guy said he'd ever done. All these people sitting around chatting quietly, no drunken hoo-ha, everybody just chilled out. And that was in late 1800s, 1890 something. And I thought, well, they're civilized, isn't it? That's the way it should be.
Yeah,
because especially when it comes to cannabis, and it's nonsense that it's illegal in the first place. Although like nonsense is. I mean, I don't know if you've ever read Mr. Nice by Howard Marks, but he says in there, I'm not sure how accurate this is. So Howard's dead now, so he's not around to anybody to shout at him if he's wrong. But according to Mr. Nice, they had a conference in 1914 in Egypt to the intention of making opium illegal. And the Egyptians insisted that they tag on cannabis because, according to the Egyptians, cannabis turned Egyptian men into lazy rapists, which is a bit of a contradiction in terms, but it made them lazy and it turned them into rapists. And everybody else at the conference kind of went, oh, for God's sake, yeah, all right, stick it on. We don't care. We just want to stop the opium trade. And then we've got to go off and deal with Germany, who are about to start a war. And so cannabis was made illegal internationally just to appease the Egyptian hosts at a conference to ban opium.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have no reason to doubt, Howard. And if that is true, that is the biggest pile of shite nonsense I've ever heard in my life, because that's now, 100 years where we could have been using it medicinally.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
As much as anything else. I mean, I've been a recreational user since I was 15. I discovered rock and roll, and funnily enough, the drugs and the sex came along quite quickly afterwards. But I joked for years and years that cannabis can cure anything except cancer, and then it turns out, lo and behold, it cures cancer as well.
Right.
So there are no downsides here. I mean, I'll grant you that 14-year-old smoking the most unbelievably strong skunk and all of that. Like alcohol, like anything, you do too much, do it too consistently, it can mess with your head. But this is why I've been arguing for years that you make it legal. Because, you go to a coffee shop in Amsterdam. I remember going there the first time, me and my mate, we walked in, guy showed us the menu, and we found this thing. It was about that big, tiny little leaf, some mad stuff from India. I don't remember what it was called. We said, we'll have that. And the guy said, you guys English? And we're like, yeah. He said, have this. We're like, no, we want that. He said, no, seriously, look, have this, smoke that. If you're not happy, come back and I'll give you that for free. Fine, all right, so off we go. Make a doobie 10 minutes later. I didn't even know my own name. Right? So as we stagger out, this guy's going, are you happy? And I'm like, oh, yeah, mate, well happy, thank you very much. But when it's legal, like it is now in several states in America, again, the staff are informative. It's like, how used to weed are you? What do you normally smoke? Then don't buy that. That will trip you out. You won't be able to deal with it. And also, you can ban. You can say, no, these are too strong. So you can't sell those. You have control then.
Yeah.
Rather than ending up with loads of kids banging away on stuff that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot barge pole, because it's the same as, I used to have a whiskey in the bar. It was 72.6% proof. And never was my cup of tea. I don't like to get that drunk that quickly. I don't like to get anything that quickly. There's a pleasant process where you start off, you have a beer, you feel a nice buzz and a tingle, and you can build on that until 6 hours later, you're pretty rat-faced. But you don't want to go from straight to rat-faced instantly.
Yeah.
So it's bleeding legalise it.
Yeah, right. Well, especially for the medical community, like you were saying.
Yeah.
It'd be lovely
indeed.
if they were just more educated about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a difficult one, I think, as I've spoken to a few people who have been under the NHS, and they've said, look, my condition, somebody's told me I can get this oil and it might help. And a lot of the doctors now, I think, do believe, but they're not allowed to say that, they've been told you cannot condone this, because if something happens and you've condoned this, then we could have relatives suing and, all of that bloody sue culture nonsense that we have to live with now. But I've heard of doctors who've been saying to people for years, people with Parkinson's and the likes, if you know anybody who can, go. You didn't hear this from me, but you get that stuff. But it's just the government needs to realise that they're missing out on a fortune in income.
Well, absolutely. I mean, been claimed
Was
it legalization could fix the national debt.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, look at Colorado. Look at the money they've been making. You know, they pretty much wiped out all their debt in a month, and now Colorado's rolling in money. Because, you know, would it bother me to pay tax on it? No, not really. No, you know, I pay tax on everything else, you know, so VAT or whatever, you know, I'm used to paying that. It's not going to make a huge amount of difference.
Then you got the whole, you're getting a better quality if it's kind of like got a licensing on it. You're getting some increase of quality with it as well.
Well, yes, you're getting better quality. You're also getting a lot of choice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got mates who live in the States, and you know, one of them was telling me that he's addicted to gummy bears now. They do infused gummy bears, and he said, you know, one of those for breakfast, and your day's just wonderful. And you know, then you've got all the vape stuff as well. For those who don't want to, you know, don't want to do the tobacco, so you now have the vape options, the eating options. I mean, the options out there are amazing. And you know, anybody listening, I'll tell you, the only thing that stopped me cracking up in the last 12 months is hash cake.
Yeah.
I've been making my own, and every night I have a little bit, an hour before I go to bed with my book, and it just, otherwise I'd lie there, you know, lie there stressing out, round and round in my bloody head. You know, insomnia I've always suffered from to a degree anyway, which is part of the reason why I've always liked hash and weed. It helps me to sleep. So yeah, I mean, if I wasn't, you know, the stress and the hoo-ha I've had this year, if it wasn't for hash cake, I think I'd be having full-on panic attacks and just be in a right bloody state by now. And you know, I think there's a lot of people out there who could benefit from the odd bit of nibble, and you know, it's such a versatile drug.
Absolutely.
You know, it recreationally and medically, it's just bloody marvelous. And
well,
I mean, for those people who believe in, you know, nature or God, well, if you believe in nature, it's outside, but you know, God or whatever. I mean, we'll call it God for now, but God gave us weed. He did not give us alcohol.
Yes.
We invented alcohol ourselves. And given the choice of the two, if I had to pick one or the other, I'd always go with weed, even though I spent 40 years selling alcohol and I love being drunk. But I think part of the reason I've been good at my job is that I've never had to rely on alcohol to calm me or relax me at the end of a night's work and all of that. So I haven't ended up being a raving alcoholic like so many people do in my industry. When, you know, you've done a 13-hour day, now you need to get to bed because you've got to get up in 7 hours. Right. And, you know, you end up, whereas I don't, you know, lovely.
Well, I think another big plus point for the legalization, of course, would be how they always often claim that cannabis is a gateway drug. Well, no, it's not, surely, because the only reason it becomes a gateway is because you're buying it from the same street dealers that are trying to sell you other stuff.
Exactly. I mean, the first time I ever did amphetamine, I went around to see the guy I normally got my hash from, and there was a drought, and he said, I haven't got any, but I've got this instead. So I was like, you know, what was I, 18 or something? I'm like, go on then, you know, anything. And yeah, you know, had he had weed, I would never have bought the speed. Yeah. So yes, indeed, it's not, you know, this idea that you do weed and then you need something harder and harder. That is such an ignorant outlook. Because these are people who assume that every drug is the same. Well, they're not. I mean, I've known plenty of people who are mad into coke, never touch weed. Yeah. Speed heads, pill heads, acid heads, people, but they don't mix and match. I mean, a lot of us do, you know, a bit of this and a bit of that, but everybody has their preference. But just because you smoke a bit of weed doesn't then go, oh, God, I have to go out and have heroin.
Yeah, right.
Of course it doesn't.
Yeah. Of course.
Absolute nonsense.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, totally. Well,
and obviously, I'm preaching to the converted here, and probably everybody who's going to watch this this interview. But it does infuriate me. I mean, can you imagine what the world would be like or this country would be like if they just legalised it 20 years ago?
Totally. Yeah, much better off.
Yeah. I mean, imagine what medical science would have done with it in the last 20 years.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, possibly, we'd be doing some kind of cannabis derivative vaccine for bloody COVID-19 right now if they had the years to look into it.
Yeah. Do you know what? I actually read up been sort of researching things online to find stuff to obviously include onto this e-zine, and I found a medical report where they said it actually helps the symptoms because of the anti-inflammatory effects of cannabis, and it reduces that lung inflammation that you can get through COVID. So
right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I know. And then I don't know about you. I mean, I'm getting old, and my joints complain, and I've not been kind to my body over the years. CBD balm. Yeah. When my elbows and my knees are aching, I slap CBD balm on it, and as you say, all it's doing, it's anti-inflammatory. And it's the inflammation in the joints that causes the pain. So you slap that on, 20 minutes later, it's like, oh, look, my knees work and they don't hurt. So, my mother, I buy a big pot of it every 6 months or so. I mean, she's 87, she's got rheumatism, arthritis, and just general aches and pains everywhere. Now, it used to take my mother about half an hour to get out of bed in the morning. She'd, back would ache, this would ache. She'd struggle, literally really struggle to get her legs out of bed. And about 5 years ago now, came across this Love CBD balm. And I gave her a pot, didn't tell her what it was. I said, slap this on. She gets out of bed. Every night now, she just slathers it on all over pretty much from head to toe. And she says now she gets out of bed in the morning, no pain at all. She just swings her legs out, up she gets, and off she goes.
Nice.
She said obviously the underlying problems are still there. It's going to be, she's 87. But she said the inflammation is gone, the pain is gone. So she said, I don't care, I'm happy, I can get out of bed easily, I can get up and down the stairs easily. She can now touch her toes.
Wow.
She does it 10 times every morning. 5 years ago, I was at half an hour to get out of bed. Now she gets out of bed and touches her toes 10 times every morning.
Brilliant.
So, just that alone, is worth it, isn't it? Just, it's such a waste. Absolute waste.
Actually, I had a very interesting experience recently. I had 3 teeth out the back. Obviously, you can imagine the pain that went with that. I tried painkillers and Nurofen and goodness knows what. And I got the CBD spray, sprayed it directly onto where the after effect pain was, and it disappeared like that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that would have been inflammation in the gum, wouldn't it? From having 3 teeth extracted, it's going to feel it pretty raw, but yeah. I did. I think humanity's missing a huge trick here. It's very, very, very bloody stupid.
Very much so. Well, hopefully with people like yourself interviewing some of the others and what we're doing with this e-zine, hopefully we can put that point across. Is one of the things.
Yes.
Do, so
I think to a degree we're getting there. I mean, I think medical marijuana is now legal in this country, isn't it? But the only trouble is it's all grown by Theresa May's husband.
Yes.
And I think this is part of why they've never legalized it, because every time they've looked at it, they've gone, how do we make money out of this? And when you've got a product that people can get their hands on illegally without too much hassle, how do you persuade people to start buying that legally? Because you've got it running legally and you've got people still able to get it illegally, a lot of people are going to not want to pay the tax. I think that's going to happen for a while, but I think very quickly. You go to Amsterdam, you can buy weed on the street. It's more expensive in the coffee shops, but hell, it's a lot nicer to go to the coffee shop. It's a much more pleasant experience than buying it off some dodgy geezer on a street corner. And you know what you're getting. Right. And you get a choice.
Yeah.
Well,
and an
this is the thing.
yeah,
Choice.
and an educated choice at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would take very long for people to go, no, I'm kind of done with having to go and see Dodgy John every couple of weeks. You know, I can just pop into the cafe and sort myself out. Thank you very much.
Right.
And again, you know, the taxation is pretty simple. I don't think Theresa May's husband should be growing it all, but I've always said that, you know, if you wanted to become a cannabis farmer, well, I think that's, you know, easily worth £100,000 initial license and then, you know, 50 grand a year as a license to grow it. So there's income for the country.
Right.
Then when you sell it, you're selling it through coffee shops. Well, you know, I have to pay money every year to have a license to sell alcohol. So again, you know, you'd be paying every year for your premises license to be a coffee shop or however it, you know, you did it. And then, of course, just 20% tax, just 20% VAT would see bleeding hundreds of millions of pounds go into the country's coffers every year. And so, you know, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think
but
so. Yeah.
I think a lot of the problem is, though, isn't it, that a lot of the people who are anti it have never done it. And I remember sitting in the office in the Crobar with a Tory MP. He was the MP for Brighton and Hove at the time. He's a nice enough bloke for a Tory, but, you know. But we were sat there and, you know, he's drinking booze and, yeah. And I'm sitting there having a little spliff and he's like, oh, no, you know, I'd never touch that. And I'm like, don't you think you're being a massive hypocrite here? You sat there drinking booze and powdering your nose and you're telling me, no, you'd never touch this. I mean, well, obviously your concern isn't that it's a gateway because you've already gone through the gate.
Yeah, right.
You know, what is your concern? And he's like, oh, well, you know, and he said, you know, I hear that, you know, people end up just monged out on the sofa. And I said, well, you can do if you smoke enough or it's too strong. I said, you know, most of us function very, very well. I said, I know people who get out and have a joint for breakfast and then they go out and do 8 hours hard graft.
Yeah.
You know, and then they come home at night and then a couple more spliffs. And yeah, maybe by 11 o'clock at night, they're a bit slouched on the sofa. But no, you know, it's not one puff and then that's it. Your day's gone. Not at all, you know. But again, it's that attitude that people just, they don't understand. They don't, you know, if you never tried something, how do you know? You know, it's like trying to explain to somebody who's never had chocolate why chocolate is amazing. And, you know, and how eating chocolate isn't guaranteed to make you fat. You know, there's a lot of people who eat chocolate here and there that they're not fat. Yes, if you sit on your sofa all day and eat pounds and pounds of chocolate, it's not good for you, but nothing is good for you done in excess quantity. So it's hard to get an argument across to somebody who has no experience, simply does not understand. But then, you know, the amount of coppers I've known who smoke weed.
Yeah.
Because they say, you know, you've just done a double shift and you've had people in your face all day. You know, and then you've got to go home and you need to get some sleep. You just need to go to bed. And they're like, yeah, I don't want to booze because what starts off as a large whiskey gets you to bed is very quickly a bottle of whiskey to get you to bed. And it's like, you know, cut the toast, boom, away, beautiful. And, you know, I know a lot of police who don't, but their opinion is still bloody legalise it. You know, why are we wasting time with this? And if you legalise it, especially a lot of them in the Met, you know, they're very aware that you legalise it and suddenly all those little gangs in South London, well, what have they got now? Nothing. Right. You've just taken away a vast amount of what makes those gangs exist, where they get their money from. So you're solving so many problems. You know, you're allowing the medical community free rein to use it for all the marvelous things they can do with it. You're raising a lot of money for the country. You're taking away a whole side of bleeding hassle for the police.
Right.
I don't see there's anything to lose here, but you know, Tories especially, it's very hard to convince them of that. And I do find, and I've pointed this out to many people over the time, do you drink? Yes. Well, you're a hypocrite then. Well, no, yes, you are. Because don't tell me that alcohol's different. Alcohol's a drug. I'm a drug dealer. I've been a drug dealer for 40 years. I sell alcohol. I am a drug dealer. And it's a drug that can have far more social consequences than cannabis ever can. I've never seen a stoned person start a fight. I've never seen stoned people throwing bricks through windows or smashing up buses, or you just don't. It doesn't get into your psyche that way, and it's you know, it's a very non-aggressive drug. I think if you invented alcohol today and tried to get it legalized, they'd be like, not a hope, mate.
Yeah,
not a hope. It messes up your liver, makes people violent, makes you depressed. Not a hope, mate. So I do find this idea that, oh, you know, I drink, but I'm totally against cannabis. You're just a hypocrite. That's absolute nonsense, and that is no argument at all. Yeah.
Fully. All right. Well, I suppose we better wrap this up before we run out of space to store the interview on the website.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Yes. Yeah, mate. Lovely. It's been nice chatting to you, and
likewise.
Well, I'll give you a call soon. I mean, very soon the crowdfunding thing finishes, and then I'll actually have some time on my hands again. I have been at the mercy of my social media manager now for the last 8 weeks, and she works me hard.
Fair.
Yeah, indeed. You know, that's her job, and you know, we're trying to get something achieved, so it's all good. But I haven't had a lot of time between that and learning French and homeschooling again, and I wasn't good at French 40 years ago. Yeah, nice one, mate. I'll give you a call.
Well, if people do want to add to your crowdfunding, what do they have to look for?
Yeah, no, it's www.crowdfunder.co.uk/Crobar.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to find. And it is effectively, it's a raffle. There are a lot of presents, a lot of gifts to be won. We're hoping to add a few more in the next couple of weeks. I'm trying to arrange 3 new prizes: a year's supply of beer, a year's supply of Trooper, and a year's supply of bourbon. We might be a problem with anybody wanting to get those in Europe, because as it turns out, it's getting hard to transport anything out of Europe now. But yeah, no, it's good. So yeah, if anybody would care to help us out, that's where they need to go.
Well, let's hope it. I really hope it all works out for you, because this country definitely needs a Crobar.
Well, if it does, mate, you'll be at the opening night.
I better be. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Somebody needs to come and give my new office a rating.
Definitely. Happy memories for that. Yes.
Indeed. All right, mate. Take care. Speak to you soon.
I'll speak to you
soon. Cheers.
Bye
bye.